And when I say I had no idea what I wanted to do, I mean, that was the God's honest truth. I had no idea what I wanted to do. All I knew for sure was that I wanted to be successful. So when I started my career, I applied to 148. I had this idea that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but it felt so scary. It was really the activation of purpose that made the change. Give me the path to success. I will walk it.
Welcome to the Soul Path Podcast, a space for inner growth, awareness, and practical tools to help you walk your own path with more clarity and purpose.
Thank you, Amanda, so much for joining us. Today we've got Amanda Kaufman, coach, entrepreneur, founder of the Coach Plaza, and seven-figure business owner. And she has helped thousands of coaches to transform their business and their lives. And she also has worked with Bing Riciosi and Tony Robbins, two of the best coaches of the world. And in this episode, we will explore her journey, how she overcame huge challenges, and the strategy she uses to grow both personally and professionally. Thank you, Amanda. And I wanted to start asking you the first question. If we rewind your life before all of this existed, your business, the impact, the success, what was really going on inside you, and what had to change for this to become possible?
Love that question. Yeah, and thank you for having me. So in the beginning of my career, it was really more about building security. So I grew up in a really remote part of Canada, and I knew from a very young age that I wanted to live in a city. I wanted to have those opportunities. I liked the ideas. Maybe I was watching too much TV and movies, but I just knew that I wasn't likely to want to stay and build a life in that very small community. It just didn't feel aligned for me. So I left to go get an education, and I got a degree in chemical engineering. And when I say I had no idea what I wanted to do, I mean, that was the God's honest truth. I had no idea what I wanted to do. All I knew for sure was that I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be able to earn the money to support the life that I saw for myself. And at first, that was really just about moving south into a city. That was like the big goal. And that's exactly what I did. I went and I got a chemical engineering degree. Engineering appealed to me because I loved math and science. I loved the idea of applying knowledge to be able to solve problems. Love that. I still love that idea. I think that's a great idea. And it just seemed like it would give me a lot of options. So I was like, cool, I'm going to be an engineer. And when you first start engineering, you don't know what kind, but in the second year, you have to declare your major. And I was like, oh, should I do electrical? Should I do mechanical? Should I do civil? Should I do chemical? And I chose chemical because the way it was presented, it sounded like it would give me the most options. And I'm like, cool, that one. So when I started my career, I applied to 148 jobs. And my only criteria was it needed to be in a city. And ideally, they would like the fact that I have my degree. And that was pretty much it. So I applied to a lot of engineering roles, but I also applied to non-engineering roles. And that included a job with a consulting company. And just like I had been doing up to that point, it seemed like the option that would give me the most options, right? They had project-based work. It sounded very exciting. There was travel. They even had an internal, university. I'm like, wait, I can get paid and I can keep learning and applying that knowledge? That sounds amazing. Sign me up. So for the first 10 years, it was really about proving myself, doing a good job, earning a good salary, building the relationships. But I honestly I had this idea that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but it felt so scary. It felt like it was very insecure. Definitely not guaranteed. The statistics around it were just terrifying. Like the likelihood of success was so low, but the idea never left my mind. And as I developed in my consulting career, the direction I developed was towards people And it was towards having impactful conversations with people. I like to joke that I started out as a water cooler coach because people would ask me questions near the water cooler or on break or over lunch. How should I approach this? We're expecting another child. How do I manage all of this? And I would just ask them questions, and then they would determine for themselves what they wanted to do, really. But it was the container of coaching, and I didn't even realize that that's what it was at the time. So fast forward a few years, I really achieved a lot in my corporate career, but I was starting to really feel like I wanted to choose my direction. I didn't want to make that same old choice of like, I'm going to choose the option with the most options. I was like, I want to be on purpose and have intention. And so I decided to really take the entrepreneurial idea more seriously. And I had lots of different ideas of what I might do as an entrepreneur. And it was coaching that ended up being the thing that I selected. But yeah, leading up to all of that, it was the same responsibilities almost anybody talks about. But it was really the activation of purpose that made the change.
Wow. Well, we don't do this, we don't take this step till we are really ready, because for me it took a long time to do this. So you've been very brave because it's not easy.
Well, that was 9 years ago, and so yeah, there's been a lot that's happened ever since. But thinking before, it was this desire, this really, really intense desire to feel on purpose and to have impact, but to also support lifestyle. And I was like, you know what? I don't care what the success likelihood is. Give me the path to success. I will walk it. And like that, you mentioned it takes like a long time. And what immediately came up for me is I'm like, it can, but the decision itself is an instant.
Yeah.
Like just like that, you can change your mind, you can change a thought instantly. And so if you've been thinking a thought for a really long time, it's almost like taking it to the conclusion of the thought so that you can then act.
Exactly. No, you're right. And as we are sharing this, there is clearly before and after in your life. I've listened some of your podcasts, and I learned that you lose your dad when you were 25 years. I lost my dad a few years ago, and it was really hard for me. And this was the thing that changed my life forever. It helped me take the steps that I never dared to take, And how did that experience change the way you see the life and the success and what truly matters?
Yes, so my dad was in my life for the first 4 years of my life and the last 4 years of his. It was a very interesting synchronicity there. I'm very fortunate. My stepfather raised me, and I grew up with him. But my biological father and I reconciled,
Okay.
as I was leaving college. And just a few years later, like I said, he passed. And looking back, the greatest thing that father taught me was that life can be so unpredictable and short. Things can change really dramatically, very, very quickly in your life. And so that changed my patience level for tolerating things that I knew were not in alignment for my life. You have one life, and what's really interesting is I really believe my dad gave me a mortality motivation, just like a recognition that life is short, and is finite, and you only have so much time. But here's the really crazy thing. He was diagnosed with a cancer. He died of cancer. And so not only did he give me the gift of the mortality, but I was really scared he'd given me the gift of the cancer potentially and cutting my own life short. And for about 10 years, I operated on the assumption that I would have as short of a life as he did. And then I remember my doctor had me do tests and genetic tests. And, things have really changed a lot in the last 20 years medically. And so I took a genetic test that basically eliminated the possibility that I would die of that. Wow. Not that I wouldn't die, but of that. And it was like the boot just came off my neck, like I wasn't, and my brain immediately realized, Amanda, you have so many relatives that live to be like 100. So, and I realized that I had so much short-term thinking. What's making me happy now? What's making me live my life to my fullest now? If I die young, like what am I going to do? But the next immediate thought was, what if I live a long time? What if I live a really long time? And what I learned from that was I was like, oh, life is very, very short, but it's also incredibly long, and you need to plan for both.
Exactly.
Right? Both are important. So I would say after receiving that news that there's a sincere possibility of longevity, then I was like, oh, I need to shift again and live for today, but also plan for tomorrow.
Oh, very good. Very nice. And after going through all that, what became the biggest fear apart from this? I don't know if the ones that you mentioned were the biggest fears that you had, or challenges that you had to face that could have stopped you, and how did you could overcome them and go through it?
Absolutely. Marta, I really appreciate you asking the question that way, because I have shifted my use of the word fear.
Okay.
Words carry a lot of power, and I love that you paired it with or challenge, because there were challenges for sure. There were certainly concerns, strong concerns, and there were also old preferences, right? Meaning like my old operating system, the way that I used to do things that were, well-worn, comfortable, pathways that I had was very familiar with. I had a lot of things that I was very familiar with, and I was facing a lot of unfamiliar things. But fear, very specifically, is something that we talk about very casually in society these days. And there have only been a couple of times in my life where I really felt fear, right? And like they were actually like dangerous situations where time was of the essence and like there was real threat. That's when I felt actual fear. What I felt so much of the time was actually, I would rename as discomfort.
Yeah.
A lot of discomfort. So I'll share with you some of my greatest discomforts. Is that okay?
Fantastic.
Okay. So my first greatest discomfort was, what if I'm making a decision that is going to make us worse off? Right? And so I'm a mother and I'm married. And so I feel a lot of responsibility to my family. So one of my greatest discomforts was, what if I make a mistake? And what if I make our family worse off than we are today by making these decisions? So that was like the first thing. The second thing, big discomfort, huge discomfort. This one's a big one for a lot of people, is I was moving from an employee situation where you get an exact amount of money, down to the penny, down to the minute, predictable income, right? And so I was really uncomfortable with the idea that I would need to create a system that brings more than that, more money than I was getting ideally. And I really was uncomfortable with the idea that I could get a lot of money and then no money, so that irregularity of flow of money was really an uncomfortable thing to address and to look at. What was another discomfort? Oh, another really big discomfort is what if you don't like me, right? And you being anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean.
Right? So I felt like I had earned so much reputation in my old career. And for me, forming friends felt really hard. Like I was very awkward. There was a lot that was uncomfortable about the change. And I would say those were kind of the really big ones, was just the social change, the change in the economics, the finances. And then I think just being worried that the value would not be understood. And especially because I was no longer attached to a bigger entity that had a huge established brand.
Yeah. I understand some of your fears because I had some similar fears as well. Because I have, in the middle of doing this decision, taking this decision, and I've been thinking about that, all of this, about my family, how can change our lives, and it's complicated. It's not that easy. It's when you have a job that you know how much are you going to earn every month, so it's not easy to live and go of the zone that is very comfortable.
Well, and I think that was the thing that made me challenge those discomforts, right? Is how comfortable am I now? In my old career, I was miserable. I was always scared of getting fired for no reason, right? and it wasn't not with no reason. Excuse me. I should make that very clear. I was a strong performer, but I also had done a lot in my career around organization design, and I saw how quickly companies can make decisions that would result in departments going away, companies being acquired. Like change is inevitable. The first quote I ever memorized as a small child was, "The only constant is change." And I remember just feeling like this fear or extreme discomfort that I would not that there would be a disruption out of my control in my career, right? And I had good reason for thinking so. I was the only person in my region that had my particular skill set. So it was like I was just this person of one. and like I said, I'd just seen so much disruption that affected organizations over the course of my career. But what I realized is that discomfort was coming from the fact that I didn't have an easy or fast line of sight to another job. I didn't have a network outside of my existing network, and I didn't have confidence in building relationships with other jobs, right? And so when I realized all of that, I was like, okay, do I keep the discomfort of sitting where I am, not pursuing knowledge I know I need to pursue, which was how to connect with people and how to network, right? How to build a really strong network, that I always have opportunities, right? Is it more uncomfortable to build that knowledge and develop that? Or is it more uncomfortable to stay in the status quo? And so for things to stay the same, the status quo, it was easy decision after that. I was like, I can learn things. I've learned how to do like differential calculus. I can learn how to talk to people, right? So, and that's why I like calling it a discomfort instead of a fear. And I still struggle with the language on that as well. But I think when we name it a fear, it stays scary. And we go, okay, well, that's a thing I'm afraid of, so I'm not going to engage it. When you say, this is uncomfortable, you can name like, what is that feeling or emotion that you're experiencing? And you can say, well, the goal is not always to be comfortable, so that's okay if I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
What do I want to do even if it's uncomfortable? And when you ask that question, it's so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I love it. I was listening to you and was thinking, wow, she's really right. Yeah, I love it. The way that you say it. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for
My pleasure.
And when your life felt heavy, and what daily habits or inner disciplines help you stay grounded and keep moving forward? Can you tell us a couple of things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a certified high performance coach. So the big advantage that gave me was it did give me some really excellent tools for handling the heaviness or the uncertainty. But more than that, I would say even more than that particular certification, I have a thirst for learning. I love it. I love listening to podcasts. I love reading. I love taking courses. I love getting coached. Like, these things are amazing to me, just absolute fuel for me. And no coach is going to be able to hand you your dream on a pedestal, on a silver platter.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what it is. I always get really excited about knowledge and growth through learning. Because like this thing about the whole fear versus discomfort language, I learned that from Brendan Burchard during his New Year. Well, he'd been mentioning it for a long time, but he reminded me of it during his New Year event that he does. And so staying plugged in, I think, to mentors and authors and content, that here's the biggest thing I try to avoid is complainers. I hate complainers. I can't stand the gossip and the complaining. And I've studied that too. The reason why people complain so much is because it is a way to connect with other people. So I almost think of it like nutritious food, right? There's different levels of food. You've got your acais and blueberries and kale and all that kind of thing that have high nutritive value. Mm-hmm. And then you've got like the caramels and candies that have really low nutritive value, but they have very quick access to the sugars, right? Yeah. So we feel a craving for the low nutritional value food because it gives us that quick fix, but long term, it's not good for you, right?
Right.
It's exactly the same thing in relationships. So in relationships, the lowest form of connection is through complaint and gossip, right? Higher forms of connection are going to be challenging and educational and vulnerable. They're going to be vulnerable. The thing about complaining is it actually protects the complainer from really sharing anything about themselves, right? Because they're externalizing, here's the problem with the world, here's the problem with that person, here's the problem with this system, here's the problem. And what it does is it's deflecting away from I am going after my goals. I am struggling with figuring this thing out. I am having a hard time with this, and it's deflecting that conversation completely. So I would say, like, I don't have patience for complaining.
Me neither.
Yeah.
And I love
learning all damn day long. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm like you, because I've been learning, and every time I see a course, oh my God, I have to do this course, and then I have to choose between different courses because I don't know which one I have to choose, because I can't do all of at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love learning as well as you. Because
I always think of it as like you have an annual budget for learning. So like even when you go to formal education like a university, what do? They give you semesters and they give you a certain class load, but you can't exceed a certain class load, right?
Yeah.
You can do a minimum, but you can't do more than the maximum, right? So it's the same thing in your personal curriculum and your personal education. You might see like, hey, at this stage of my business, there's 4 different coaches that I could choose from, right? What I would do is I would actually come back and say, okay, what's going to move the needle the furthest for me right now? Who matches my value system really well? So I'm like likely to resonate and have chemistry with them. What fits my investment for this year, right? Because you should have an idea of what that is. Yeah. It's not zero,
no.
But it's probably not millions of dollars either. Like you probably have a budget. And if so, I'd love to give you this tip if that's okay.
Okay, fantastic.
I like to tie my financial performance with my business to how much coaching I get. So if my business does really, really well, part of my reward system is I get to do more programs that year, or I get to do like a more bodacious thing. Wow. For my personal growth and development, because I love investing in it, right? But what I do is I tie it to the performance of the business. So then it's an incentive for the business to perform.
Wow, I love that idea. I think that I would do the same. I don't have a budget, but what I do is like you. What I feel that is going to help me the most in my business is what I invest in.
That's exactly it. And you just remember, like every year you get an opportunity to make new decisions. There's no pressure to get the right one, because if you do a good decision, you can make another good decision next year, right? Exactly. Everybody's afraid of making the bad decision. And The truth is I've spent over $300,000 at this point on coaching, courses, masterminds, training, and all of that kind of thing. And I can authentically say that there's only been one program that I feel like I wish I didn't invest anything in it. But the only reason why I felt that way is because I hated the sales process. So there was a particular sales process that like I felt overly pressured. I made a dumb decision about spending money I didn't really have access to. And so honestly, it's not even about the program. It was about my control over my buying decisions, right? I've honestly never taken a program that I didn't learn something that was worth more than what I paid.
Wow.
Including that one, by the way. Right? Because I can't get bullied or pressured the way that happened ever again, because I know I've been there. And that's worth $10,000 easy.
After, what belief about yourself or about success did you have to unlearn to build the life and business that you have today?
To unlearn?
Yeah, something that you thought, well, it's that way, and then you realized that was not correct, you believe. And it wasn't helping you, I mean.
Goodness gracious, we all have limiting beliefs, don't we?
Yeah.
So many.
So the biggest one.
Yeah, biggest ones. Probably around some ideas around deservedness. So we human beings, we have like this calibration around fair. Like we're always like seeking to make things balanced and fair. And the reality is that life is not fair. People are not fair. Systems are not fair, right? So why is fair such a goal? And I think that fair is a worthy and good goal in a lot of contexts and situations. But where it would become problematic for me personally is I would get emotional or triggered or upset about how things are unfair. And there were a lot of narratives around that. And I'm not here to say that those narratives are incorrect. I'm saying that they held me back. So for example, this is probably a little controversial, but for years and years, I would get really frustrated about the fact that boys seem to do better in business than women.
Yeah.
And it would piss me off. I'd be like, wow, I have to do all this extra work just to get the attention. I have to do all this extra work to justify a higher price point. I have to do all of this extra da 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 da. And I would get stuck in that narrative about how it's so unfriggin' fair. And I'm here to say, yeah, it is unfair. But it's not who cares. I'm very, supportive of women, and I want us to do better. But when I looked at it much more closely, I realized I'm like, oh, we hold ourselves back as well. It's not men versus women. It's society versus women. It's everyone versus women. And I can look at the fact that I'm a woman as a curse or a blessing. And that is a choice. And I decided to make the choice of blessing. And I am blessed to have more conversations maybe than a male business coach would have to get the same amount of business. Fine, right? It just means that I have to be better. And it becomes limiting when you're expecting others to fix something that no one's been able to fix so far. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. I could probably pick on money beliefs. I could probably pick on other beliefs. But I think like the fairness thing keeps people really upset and really stuck for a long time.
That's true. And after coaching thousands of people, what's the core pattern that you see that keeps more people stuck, and how do you help them break it?
I think the most core thing that I hear, and it gets presented and projected in lots of different ways, because people have different personalities and presentations and experience, right? But if I was to just like peel that onion all the way back to the core layer, it's a concern around our enoughness.
Yeah.
Right? So am I stuck in my being of who I am right now, that I cannot become the version that I aspire to? And so sometimes people cover that up by saying like, oh, I'm just so great, I'm just so amazing. Some people go the opposite direction, and they are hyper focused on their flaws and their issues, or their maladies, or their victimhood. But I think at the core of both, it's this concern of enough. Am I smart enough? Am I wise enough? Am I enough in the eyes of other people? That seems to be the core thread.
Yeah, I think the same as you. I have, because the majority of the people that comes here with me, I can see the same pattern as you see. And it happened to me as well. I'm enough. Yeah. And because it's something sometimes unconscious, it's not really conscious. You cannot reprogram, consciously. Even you say, no, I'm very good, I'm good enough. It doesn't work like this.
Well, and you ask like, how do I coach through it? The reason why that's such a difficult question for people to wrestle with is it's just a paradox. You are simultaneously enough and not enough always.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's a interesting human question, and overall it's a distraction, because it's basically your ego. Your ego's concern around acceptance by the tribe. So if we can shift the conversation around enoughness, and some people do this spiritually, so their religious and spiritual beliefs. For me personally, I believe in and ascribe to the idea of one. So it's not that I, Amanda, have these boundaries, and inside the container of those boundaries is Amanda, and is Amanda enough or not? That's actually not the question. It's more so there are no real and true boundaries. I'm not different than you. You are not different than me. And when you realize that, you get access to all these people with their knowledge and their history and their capability and all of those kinds of things. And when you can nurture your ability to relate and connect with people, you realize that your not enoughness, it doesn't actually matter, because there's so much, right? And then on top of that, you are far more than you think you are. Right? So this whole question, like I said, it's very relevant when it comes to the pursuit of goals, but what is relevant when it comes to goals on kind of a earthly plane, we'll say, is like, are we taking the actions that result in the outcomes? If we're not taking the actions that result in the outcomes, it is unlikely that we will affect our goals, right? And I think one of the big traps of coaching and personal development and all of these kinds of things is getting stuck in narratives and conversations that are not supportive or related to the core issue, because those conversations feel good, but they don't necessarily help you do good.
That's right. It's what we say. We tell ourselves that that can block us or can help us.
Precisely. Yeah.
You built a 7-figure coaching business. And what were the 2 or 3 decisions that actually moved the needle the most that you took?
Yeah. Number one, and I want to be really clear about 7 figures, like that's 7 figures. We've done multiple 7 figures over the lifetime of the business, right? So I've never done 7 figures in 1 year. So I just want to be really clear about that.
Okay.
And that's related to the first thing I'm going to tell you, which is you must decide that is the priority.
Okay.
And for my first few years, I really struggled with why am I not making $1 million a year? I'm so focused. I do all these things. I sign up for all the programs. Da, 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 da. And what I didn't realize is I was entitled. So entitled means that you have an expectation and you expect someone other than you to fulfill it. So my disappointment over and over again, it translated to like, oh, the market doesn't respect it. Nobody understands me. It was very externalized. Remember the complainers?
Yeah.
I used to be a complainer. And so it was a lot of complaints about how the world wasn't bending to my will. And like, that's so the opposite of what needs to happen. So for you to achieve anything that is significant and wildly different than your current circumstances, you must first truly, authentically decide that that is going to be the priority, whether you win or lose, right? And so like, that's a whole attitude. That's a whole different thing. And if I hadn't made that decision, I wouldn't do multi 6 figures a year, right? Like, and most, like, just making more than 6 figures a year puts me in the top 15% of female entrepreneurs. I'm somewhere probably between the top 3 and 8% of female entrepreneurs on the basis of revenue generated, which is nuts. Because I'm not making 7 figures. Like, for you to make 7 figures puts you in the top like 1 or 2%, right? So when you make the decision to be in the top 8 or the top 2 or the top 1 or the top 1 in 1,000, guess what? You're deciding to do what 999 other people won't do.
Yeah.
And when I look back on those years where I didn't do 7 figures, I was like, what else was I doing? I'm like, well, I was raising a family. And I hate blaming my family, so I hate saying that, you know, out loud, but it was really clear to me where my priorities really were. And if you're ever wondering, like, where are my priorities? Have I made this decision? I will tell you where you can find your priorities. And they are in 2 places: your calendar and your bank account. So look at where you did spend your money. Look and don't just look at like where I bought programs or, you know, I mean, all of it. Every dollar that came toward you, where did you direct it? Because that's your priorities. I promise you that's your priorities, right? And it's the same thing with your calendar. So many people are giving their attention and their time and their energy to apps for free because they believe they have to cope with their life. They have not decided to create something. They have not decided to show up in a different way. And because they have not made that decision, they have all this free time that's going to entertainment.
Yeah.
And so yeah, first thing, you got to decide, and really decide, not just like declare it or tell all your friends. I mean, decide, cut away other opportunities, cut away other priorities, cut away the other things. And you know, what's really interesting is I've met a lot of 7-figure entrepreneurs. They still have families. They still go to the gym. And arguably, some of the most successful people, they are like the fittest, the healthiest as well. And it's because they've decided to, right? So that's like the super first thing. I think the second thing is decide not to be a dummy. So, you know, a lot of people are like, I decided, fantastic, full marks, you did the first thing. But then they proceed to do something they've never done before with no guidance, no research, no mentorship, nothing. And then they're like, I should, on the basis of how awesome I am, be able to simply walk into this extraordinary accomplishment and just like win. And that's like somebody showing up to a marathon, never having run before.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's nuts, right? But people do it with business all the time. And like, I did it too, because I was like, oh, well, I work for this big fancy company. I learned so many cool things in that big fancy company. But what I needed to do was humble myself to say, you know what? I don't know how to sell to individuals. You know what? I avoided networking. I didn't get good at it. I avoided it. Right. And so I had to get humble to realize like, oh, there's skills that I need to invest in getting good at. Right. time, money, and energy. And then I'd say the third big thing is probably it's going to be a combination. Okay. The third big thing is most businesses go out because of cash flow. What is cash flow? It's a function of how much money comes in and on what timing, and how much money goes out and on what timing. That bends people's brains. They're just like, I'm just going to try and make lots of money. And that's what I did too. Stupid. Looking back. I'm just going to make lots of money so that I never have to worry about it. But here's the thing. There's something called Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law is basically that whatever time, money, or energy you allocate to something, it'll use all of it. So that's why when you get new toothpaste, you're just like onto your toothbrush and you don't care, right? But then when you get to the end of the toothpaste tube, you're practically bending, ripping that thing open to get the last little bit of toothpaste out, right? And going to all this effort to still brush your teeth. Same job, right? So what happens is when you don't have cash flow controls in place, or planning and proactivity in place, you tend to spend more as you earn more. So then your profit at the end of the day ends up being less or non-existent. And this happens all the time with entrepreneurs. So definitely read the book Profit First. But I would say have a plan for every dollar for how you're going to earn it and how you're going to spend it. If you have a plan for every dollar for how you're going to earn it and how you're going to spend it, you're going to be Gucci. But most people are scared of money, so they don't even look at it. I'm going to get mugs made that say dreamer with a spreadsheet. Because if you have that spreadsheet, you can tell I'm off track. And this is where the ego shows up, right? Let's say you set an earning target. And let's say you said, I want to, in the next 90 days, make $100,000 US. Great. What's your plan to go and do that? You need to have an offer. You need to have a vehicle for meeting people that want to buy that offer. And you got to be able to you got to drive the vehicle. You got to actually run it. And when businesses fail, it's usually because they have no idea about their cash flow. And they also offer the wrong product to the wrong market. So with coaching, you know who buys the most coaching?
Women?
Coaches.
Okay.
Coaches buy the most coaching. Right? But think about why, right? Is because they already understand the product. They understand how valuable it is. They understand all these things. This is like the most uncomfortable thing to say and out loud, right? That coaches are the ones that buy a lot of the coaching. But it's true because they already understand the product, right? Yeah. Normal people need education about personal development. They need education about why working with a coach matters. They need all of these things. So for me, when I was starting out, I was like, I want to sell to non-coaches. Okay, well, I can't sell to somebody who can only work with me if I take insurance. That means I have to go to somebody who has more income and disposable income, which means I need to solve problems that save them time, right? People who have money will spend money to save time. So what a lot of coaches do is they're like, sign up for my program, spend 50 sessions with me for just $50 an hour. And they don't realize that nobody who has money wants to spend that much time on a problem. And if you have a laughably low rate for the time that you are spending, and you're not specifically helping people to save time, it's going to be a really tough sell. And that's where most coaches are, but it's because they have a bad match of their product to the market.
Wow, amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot today.
I snuck in a fourth thing. I hope you don't mind.
No. And the last question. For those who feel called to become coaches and build purpose-driven businesses, what's the advice that you wish you have received at the beginning?
I wish that someone explicitly said to me, Amanda, building a business always costs money. And it's a long game, and it shouldn't take a long time to make your first dollar. That's not what makes it a long game. What makes it a long game is finding the rhythms, the systems, the tools, and the balance to make it a reliable source of cash flow, right? That's project after project doing it. I think a lot of people hear that it takes a long time, so then they dilly-dally and they go do other stuff, and they're in distraction, and they excuse themselves from taking action. And without action, there cannot be the reaction, right? You've got to take action to create reactions. So I think the final thing I wish people had said is that don't compare your business success to what you see on the internet. Instead, build a spreadsheet that shows your living expenses. Get your living expenses as low as you can. And if your business doesn't support your living expenses, get supplemental income. And so a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh my God, I hate my job. I don't want to do my job. And it's like, look, what that thing you hate about your job. So in my case, I hated networking, right? I hated networking. So the thing that I hated about my job was the thing I needed to get good at as an entrepreneur. And by the way, 10 times better, which is so ironic to me. So, I think a lot of people, they hate their job, and I'm like, then change your job, right? Shift teams, shift how you show up to the job, because whatever problem you're facing at work, you will face in entrepreneurship, only you won't have the accountability that you have when you're in a corporate job. And that's why for a lot of entrepreneurs, we really benefit from having a coach, having mastermind containers and things like that, because it gives us an externalized accountability that you actually already have at work. You're just maybe not grateful for it because you don't realize that you need it, right? So yeah, everybody wants to avoid work. Everybody wants to avoid pain. Everybody wants to avoid uncertainty. That does not make you special. That is not purpose. When it's purpose driven, it means that you see a change in the world that you want to affect. And kind of looping back to what we were talking about, I want more women to be successful in business, period. I want them to be more successful in their careers, period. So I tend to make time for helping women, and I tend to make time for other projects that are in that vein. And I work with men too, but I work with men who are respectful of women. Right?
That's really nice.
and so you've got to have reasons that are beyond the paycheck, like well beyond the paycheck, well beyond what you're going to do with the money. You need to have reasons that are bigger than that because of the unpredictability of the outcomes that you're going to be achieving. But yeah, I would never go back. I love the freedom, and I love the flexibility, and I love the ability to shift and to change quickly. So I like that as an entrepreneur, and I don't think I could ever go back to a 9-to-5. I definitely couldn't work the way that I used to work. I've thought about this. I'm like, maybe I could work on somebody else's team, but I have such higher standards now for all of that I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. It would have to be a really magical, purpose-aligned company. Yeah.
So, Amanda, this has been a really such a powerful conversation with you. Thank you for your honesty, your depth, and your sharing about your success and about your journey behind it. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for your interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next episode, Darcy Gervais, a manifesting coach.